You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for the third episode of Ahsoka Time to Fly. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen, and with me, as always, the illustrious Joe Hogan.
Let's do it, baby. How you doing, Mike? How you feeling?
Good. We are once again podcasting from the world between worlds.
Yes.
This space between spaces outside of time. We're in here. Ahsoka is in here. The aliens from the end of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull are in here, and nope, we can't reference that one guy now from Marvel because it turns out that he's a dirtbag. So he's not in here though. He's not in here. But we Bill Murray. Nope. Wait. Also canceled.
Yeah, we don't know about that
one. Was there anybody in the quantum realm that wasn't a problem? We are in here with MODOK, and
sure.
Yeah.
Michelle Pfeiffer's here.
Michelle Pfeiffer is here. That'd be nice. Star Wars is a television property. That used to be movies, but now they don't make movies for Star Wars anymore. They just make TV shows, and this is one of those shows, Ahsoka, and she has spiky things on her head that go up, and then also ones that go down, and they have stripes, and she has orange skin, and this was an episode. Listen, I liked it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. There was a lot of cool stuff in it. I like that they managed to retcon Borsk Thalia into the story via a character that we actually already know. So there was some really fun stuff in this episode. But I actually so I watched it last night, and then this morning, just kind of drop off the girls, and I'm running a couple of errands, and I'm on my way home, and I'm like, oh, I'm recording with Joe this afternoon. I guess I should have some opinions on this episode. What happened? And it took me a solid minute to sort of recall. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we had the talkie scene at the beginning, and then we had the Zatoichi scene in the middle, and then we had the dogfight scene, and other than that, it's kind of, I don't know, it just kind of meandered a little bit for me, but that's okay. I mean, it's third episode, right? Like we're still establishing a rhythm and sort of like, what's this gonna be? And we still it's funny, we're at that place where we were, I think, in the third episode of Obi-Wan as well, where it's I don't know about this Reva character. She's very interesting, but I don't know anything about her yet.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time connecting. And I'm having the same thing with Shin Hati, right? Where it's clearly there's something here. Clearly there is something interesting underneath the surface of this character, because the actor is doing a lot of heavy lifting to let us know that, right? But in terms of what we've gotten on screen so far, it's just kind of meh. And then Merrick is a non-character. Merrick is a helmet, and I really hate it when we have Star Wars characters that are just helmets. You know what I mean? It's you can go deep back into the archives of Frontlines, the Clone Wars podcast, when they were bringing back Darth Maul, and you can hear me talk a lot about how I disliked Darth Maul because I was like, he's an action figure. Like, why are we bringing him back? I don't know. Because I was kind of like, Savage exists. You made Savage, so just double down on Savage Opress. But instead, Savage's storyline. I remember saying this towards the end of that. It was like Savage Opress's storyline. It just exists to bring back Darth Maul. Either just bring back Darth Maul or like make Savage Opress an interesting character. And I mean, they did both, and they made Darth Maul an infinitely more interesting character in the process. But so I say all of that to say, like I'm gonna have patience on this and see how it all sort of shakes out. But I don't. It just. I used to say the same thing about Boba Fett, where it's like everything cool about him was the way that he looked, up until Mando brought him back and made him an interesting character. So if anybody's gonna do it, listen, guys. If anybody's gonna make Merrick an interesting character, I think it's gonna be Dave. He's gonna give that character something eventually. All of the rumors and speculation, initially everybody was like, well, obviously it's Ezra, and it's like, well, no, if
Who the
Ezra,
hell said it was Ezra?
right, if Ezra, it will, because we don't see, they haven't told us what this character's name is, or like, this was before we knew that he was Merrick and all that. It's like, we don't know this character's name, and he's wearing a helmet, so it's going to be a reveal. And it's like, I don't think it is a reveal, guys. I don't think that it's special. I think he is Merrick, and that's the character. I think that at some point there will be a conversation, there will be a throwaway line about that fact that he used to be an Inquisitor, and that'll be us going, okay, so that is the uh, third brother. Which brother was it? Not the fifth brother, because that's the big shark man, right? The whichever one he was, the 12th brother. I don't know, the one that we thought we saw die, um, but
Right.
that we didn't actually see a body, so we just saw his lightsaber fail, right?
Mm.
So, um, but yeah, all of the rumors right now are saying, because I guess in one of last week's episodes, Sam Witwer was credited, and so everybody's like, well, obviously that's Star Killer, you guys. It's like, I don't think that Dave is bringing back Star Killer. You guys, I don't think that he's retconning Star Killer into the storyline as an Inquisitor. There's actually a video online that you can find of Sam Witwer talking about this,
Yeah.
about how like he had lengthy conversations with Dave about Star Killer, and it's like, well, once the Inquisitors were introduced, Star Killer doesn't fit into the narrative anymore, right?
Mm.
Because Star Killer is from a point in time when we didn't have Inquisitors, we didn't have any of that stuff, right? Like the closest we had was like the Purge Troopers, which we still have. They're canon now, right? But um the idea was that Starkiller was Vader's secret apprentice. So like he can't be an Inquisitor, because the Inquisitors are sort of like a lower level than a Sith, right? Like they'll never be Sith, right? Like that's kind of the whole point of them, is that like they're kind of like Palpatine and Vader keep them at arm's length in that way.
Mm.
Even the Grand Inquisitor hanging out with Vader in Obi-Wan is still like not even close. Like not even close, right? Like Vader keeps them at such a distance. Um, Whereas Starkiller, first off, Palpatine's not even supposed to know that he exists, right? In the beginning.
Mm.
And it's like the idea is that he's using him to usurp Palpatine, right? So I don't think that Vader's apprentice would be a an attack dog for Balin Skull. I just don't,
Mm.
I just don't see that. I don't see how you
Yeah.
get from Vader's apprentice to I'm not saying anything and I'm just taking orders from this random guy, right? Because Balin is a very cool character and I love him, and I can't wait to see more of that character like evolve over the series. But I just like I don't get like a Lord of the Sith vibe from him, right? Like
Sure.
he's just out there. These guys, like the two of them, Balin and Shin are trying to survive, right? Like that's in the same way that like Cal and Marin and Ahsoka and Kanan and everything, like they're just trying to figure out how do you make your way in the galaxy now that the Jedi are extinct and uh, all wanted, basically, right? Like you're an instant fugitive. How do you figure that out? And like this, and he ended up going down this weird sort of dark side path, as opposed to what we've seen with the others, which is they go into hiding and then can't help it and have to help people, right? Like he went a different way. So like that's a different. This is a very different thing from like, like he has no. I don't think that I mean, like, I guess he makes the comments at the end of the second episode, right, where Shin's like, when we find Thrawn, then what? And he's like, power beyond anything you can imagine, or something like that. And it's like, okay, so like, obviously, like he sort of has his designs on what it's gonna be. I think that he looks at it and goes like, well, I'll restore the Jedi Order, but like in my own image, like my vision of it, sort of thing. But like he's not a Sith, like that's for sure, right?
No,
And
yeah.
like Davis said, that's why they have orange lightsabers and not red. But this idea that character is Starkiller is just like, it is so far-fetched. I'll be very, very, very surprised. I mean, like, could Sam Witwer be playing Merrick? Sure, right? But if we see him without a helmet, I think he'll be an alien species. I mean, that character from Rebels is supposed to be an alien species, some sort of a something or other jumper. I don't know. There's some visual dictionary entry or something that says that he's some other thing other than a human. But I would love that, actually. Like if he does take his helmet off at some point, and it is absolutely Sam Witwer, but he's got like purple makeup on or something. Like he's like
Oh
another
man.
color, and it's like, there he is. You guys got what you wanted, but he's not Starkiller. The fanboys would like start flipping cars and lighting things on fire because that character is like one of the main like I toxic uh Star Wars like rallying cries, right? It's like there's a trinity of them. It's Starkiller, Bane, and Revan. It's those three characters. Like if I ask you who your favorite Star Wars characters are, and any of those three are in your favorite Star Wars characters, I know that we have polar opposite opinions on Star Wars,
Mm.
because it's like Starkiller is a video game character, right? Like, full stop. Like, I love the Force Unleashed games. They were very fun to play, and the story of the first one is a very good story. The story of the second one's kind of but that character's journey I find very interesting. I think it's really cool. Um, that said, pulling Star Destroyers out of the sky and shooting lightning and, you know, ripping things apart and stuff like that, like it's nothing, is like, those are video game powers.
Yeah.
Like, that's a video game character. Even if he did exist in the canon, he wouldn't exist in the same way. He wouldn't do the same things. But what those fanboys want to see is they actually don't care about the characters. And that's sort of that's where it's like, that's their red flag, is when they say those three characters. They actually don't care about those characters. What they care about is, especially with anything Old Republic, like Knights of the Old Republic, or um uh Force Unleashed, is cinematics, right? Like they want to see like FMVs, right? They don't play Final Fantasy VII for the story. They play it for the cutscenes. Like, they don't actually care about what's happening in between or any of the actual like character stuff. They just care about seeing full motion video. You guys like those I can't remember the name of the studio that's done them, but all of those um the cinematic trailers for the Old Republic, they're like,
Was it Blur?
yeah, it was Blur. They are um they are like systemic toxic Star Wars, in my opinion, because like that's the when people watch Obi-Wan, and then they go and they watch the final fight between Obi-Wan and Vader, and they're like, that wasn't a very good lightsaber battle. And it's like, I'm sorry, excuse me, what are you talking about? It's one of the best lightsaber duels in the entire saga, right? Like, it's so much better than the one in Revenge of the Sith, right? Like it's almost, in my opinion, it's the do-over on the one in Revenge of the Sith, which is all flash and then like a bit of substance at the very end, right? But what they want is they want a slow motion Jedi flipping over a lightsaber that's been thrown at them, and like they just want to see special effects happening, right? Like they
Mm,
don't care about the story or anything like that. And then like with the Starkiller thing, it's very similar where like they don't actually care about that character. They just want to see like that power being displayed, like that power
mm,
fantasy being displayed. Um and like I don't necessarily have a problem with those in the right time and place, right? In the context. Like I also think that that stuff is cool. I just don't think that it has a place in narrative Star Wars, right? There's a very big difference between interactive Star Wars and narrative Star Wars. Although I would say that like the Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor games managed to find exactly the right balance
mm,
between narrative and interactivity. It's like I feel powerful, I feel like a Jedi when I'm playing those games, but at the same time, like the story dictates when and where, right? And that's the way that it should be. Um, and there's nothing like too over. I mean, like listen, there's some over the top stuff in Survivor, but it's over the top stuff that got earned over the course of two games,
mm,
and it uses established canon. Not that canon matters because we can always create new stuff, but it uses established rule sets in order to do it, right? Like it doesn't it doesn't go it doesn't take force pull and turn it into ripping a star destroyer out of the sky, right? Which is very cool and very fun, but just there's a reason why those are called the Force Unleashed, right? Like it's meant to be hyperbolic and over the top,
right.
and I don't think it's meant to be taken literally as canon story,
No,
right?
no.
Like that's kind of always the way that I felt about that. But
Even the devs were very vocal about that. Like, yeah, no. Like, it's just fun. We amped it
mhm,
up specifically so that it was fun. We know Jedi don't actually, you know, have these types of powers like this exaggerated or whatever.
yeah, yeah, it's yeah. So, anyways, I like, and that's where I say like just to have Starkiller show up in a narrative regardless of anything else, like he will ultimately be a disappointment to the fans,
Yeah.
right? Because he will not be ripping star destroyers out of the sky or shooting like lightning bolts, through 500 stormtroopers at once, right? Like that's not the type of stories that they tell. Um, if anything, like I actually think that Dave has actually like really, really, really pulled back a lot of that stuff, even from like the Clone Wars and the prequels. Like you think about sort of what's happening in this episode, and the Force stuff is very subdued, right? Like it's very, very chill and sort of like it's meditative. Even the Zatoichi scene, which the fact that she straight up says that, like she calls it that, which for people who don't know, Zatoichi is a blind swordsman. Like he's a character in Japanese pop culture, that he's like a samurai that can, he wears like a blindfold and is like unbeatable, right? Like he can sense like a feather falling and like slice it in half perfectly, right? um so that reference, like that, when she's kind of like, we'll do this lesson, is referencing that, and it's putting the helmet on and everything. And I did see a couple of people online be like, oh, the helmet thing again. And it's like, yeah, yes, it's not like I think the important thing to remember from a storytelling perspective is that, yes, the first time we were introduced to that was Obi-Wan in the whatever, the activity area, the lounge or whatever on the Falcon, and he looks over and he sees this. He sees a pilot helmet with a blast shield, and it's got the blast shield down, and he goes, "Put this on." Because it was there, right? So he was, "Put this on. You've got the training remote," which was obviously Obi-Wan's, right? Which makes sense that, like, he's got a training remote for his own training, and here's a perfect thing. I'll use this. Put this on. We're emulating something that we did in the temple, right?
Mhm.
So when we see it in Clone Wars, because we see references to this sort of thing in Clone Wars, we see it in other things, right? In other pieces of media. It's it's a retcon in a way. It's like it's reverse engineering it from the scene with Obi-Wan and Luke, but it is reinforcing the scene with Obi-Wan and Luke. So for Ahsoka to then, like, first off, they are on a Republic ship. This is a Republic Jedi transport, right? So the idea that Ahsoka would have the equipment necessary to train a Jedi on this ship is totally logical. It is not just nostalgia bait. And also, it's not the same scene. It's not like she pulls out a training remote and goes, "Here you go, train with this remote." It's like, to me, it actually implies that obviously, like, they've already sort of they've like passed that part of it
Mhm.
a little bit. And she's like, "Here we go," and it looks more like a fencing mask. So it's like, this is like the real deal. This isn't Obi-Wan pulling a pilot helmet, right? Like, this is what they would have used in the temple, sort of, to do this exercise in the past. um but then I think even beyond that, like, Ahsoka sort of has is sort of putting her own flair to it or whatever, right? But I don't know, like, to me, that was the best scene in the episode. That's one of the best scenes in the series so far, is just like the very sort of like reserved and restrained nature in which that's done, because it could have been flashier, or it could have been more boring. Like, there's a really fine line there to walk, where it's like it needs to be slow and methodical, but there has to be tension to it in
Mhm.
order for it to really work. And yeah, I don't know. I thought that they totally nailed that whole sequence. I've talked a lot since we started recording. I I do you have anything to say about anything that I've said?
No.
Oh, you good? Okay. Well, then I'll go.
Little, just like little things, just
Yeah.
the tiny things in response. Yeah, I mean, I hope the Chad Bros enjoyed this episode. There's plenty of FMV type
Yeah.
sequences.
Yeah.
I think Ahsoka doing a slow motion aerial in space on the wing
Yeah.
was something right out of Clone Wars. It felt like a Clone Wars action sequence or video game sequence, which I liked it. It was cool. Like, I appreciate that stuff. I enjoy action when it's fun and creative, and I actually
Totally.
I thought that was neat. I thought that was a cool scene. Um, but like you said, there's not a ton of substance to it. It's so funny because, like, when I was a teenager and in like the prequels were coming out and everything. I remember the thing I was looking forward to the most in every movie was, oh, the lightsaber duels and the action, and it's gonna be so great, man, and the longest duel ever in existence, Anakin
Yeah.
versus Obi-Wan, and it's darker this movie because everyone dies. Now I'm just like, no, I like character scenes. I like scenes when characters say and do things and you peel back a layer to them and get a little more about who they are under the hood now. So it's funny because I think Baby Joe Hogan would have also loved this series and this episode because it was so action heavy, but present day cool guy Joe Hogan is like, no, I like the scenes where they talk more. That's weird. It's weird that your perspective and opinion changes over time.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Here's a question for you as someone who has watched, and I don't remember if you've enjoyed Resistance.
Hmm.
Uh Kaz's dad. in that one scene arguing with Hera. Is that Do you feel that was in character for him? Because I have never watched Resistance. I saw people
Yeah,
saying like, "Oh yeah, that's Kaz's dad. He's a jerk." Like the temperature I was getting from those people who were saying that were, "Oh, that's kind of surprising." Do you feel that that character? Well, first of all, is that character even in the show, or
yeah,
was it just implied in who that character was because of who Kaz? Maybe Kaz had said something, or I don't know if their relationship was ever shown on the show or anything, but like,
yeah.
was that like true to form for that character, or what's the
Totally,
story with that?
totally.
Okay,
100% on point
okay,
with the character. So what our interaction with Hamato Ziono is the name of the character. Uh is that he was supposedly on Hosnian Prime because he's a sentient, right?
oh, okay,
So
bummer.
so at the end of Resistance season 1, that the season, the second to last episode shows Starkiller Base destroying
Okay,
Hosnian Prime.
okay,
So at the end of the first season, we think that it's happened, that he's died, that his father has died, and like Kaz, like we go through that with Kaz. We do end up actually discovering, I think, that in season 2 that he didn't die. Because I think that's the case. It's been so long, because I think what happens is like then Kaz like uh let me just double check on Wikipedia. Let's see. When the First Order destroyed. Yeah, I Hamato, Kazuda's mother, and the rest of their family survives as they had been off planet during the Cataclysm. Following the loss of the New Republic Senate, Senator Ziono contacted his son, warning him of the danger his activity as a resistance spy had placed his family in. So, like, there's a moment between Kaz and Hamato where he's like, Kaz is like, we need help, right?
mm,
Like, we're on the run from the First Order. They are actively trying to kill us, right? Because I the they're not ISB at that point. It's whatever, the First Order
okay.
security. I can't remember the character's name. It's just so long ago. But she's like got it out for the Colossus and the Aces, right? Like she's they want the Colossus basically, is like, because it's basically like a warship, right? Um,
Is this the gold stormtrooper?
No, that was
Okay,
Pyre, Commander Pyre.
okay,
So by season 2, Pyre, I think actually Pyre maybe dies at the end of season 1, but Pyre is like not that big of a deal later on.
okay.
It ends up, you end up with this basically like an intelligence officer who like sort of takes over the whole operation. But like Phasma and Kylo Ren make appearances in Resistance. It's actually like Resistance, from episode to episode, Resistance can be a little bit like it's a very, it can have a very silly tone to it,
Mm,
so it's not everybody's cup of tea. But overall, Resistance is an important story in the sequel era. I just don't think that people care as much about the sequels as they care about the other eras.
mm,
So it's just like, it was, I think it was also very hard for them to chart a course for that series in the midst of the chaos of making those movies,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
So Resistance was originally meant to serve a purpose. Resistance was originally meant to be a show about racers, right? In the Outer Rim, removed from the conflict of the First Order and the Resistance, right? And it was supposed to be like, hey, the First Order is encroaching on this Outer Rim thing, but this is like people just trying to sort of like live their lives. Like, it's sort of to show us what like peacetime looked like, and the reason why the rest of the galaxy was like, there's nothing happening. Like, what are you talking
Mm,
about like Leia Organa being like everything's going to hell, right? And they're like, and everybody else in the galaxy is like, we don't know what you're talking about. We're enjoying these races over here, or this over here. Like everything's fine. But it was supposed to be like the First Order was like trying to infiltrate the Colossus, right? Like
mm,
sort of insidiously, to give us like an idea that like, oh, so the First Order is throughout the galaxy, sort of like with tendrils everywhere, not overtly with stormtroopers, but like a little bit more of this sort of thing. And then um and then they pivoted the show and made it more of a way to like set up the larger resistance coming to aid like the main resistance, like Leia's resistance, and discovering like I think that what they wanted to do was basically use it as like, I mean, like in the same way that Star Wars Rebels establishes that there's a bunch of rebel cells out there, right? And that eventually they all come together and form the Rebel Alliance. That's why it's an alliance, because there are all of these different factions that come together to do this. And I think that like coming going into The Last Jedi, having that story in front of them written, I think that they pivoted the show and went, okay, let's use this to set up that, like, okay, so here's the Colossus and the Aces. This is one faction of the Resistance, and eventually this faction of the Resistance will meet up with Leia and Poe and every, because Poe is connected to Kaz, right? Like Poe is the one who recruits Kaz from the New Republic Navy and brings him for this secret mission on the Colossus in order to like keep an eye on it, right? For Leia, right? So like there's a connection there, and it's like, okay, so eventually the Colossus will hook back up with this other resistance, and it'll be and in the third movie, like the whole resistance comes together in the way that the Rebel Alliance all comes together in Return of the Jedi, right? Like I think that they wanted to mirror that. um and then the reaction to The Last Jedi happened, and when the reaction to The Last Jedi happened, they canceled the show. Like that's the like that's sort of the long and short of it. So there was a larger thing going on there, and then there were all these politics going on in Disney and Lucasfilm at the time. The other thing is that they put it on the Disney Channel instead of Disney XD, because Rebels had gone on Disney XD, but Disney XD was like too narrow cast, and they felt like, okay, what we need to do is we need to like Disney Channel has a larger audience, we'll make it a little bit more kid friendly. So there's a joke that like Kaz never hurts anybody, right? The only time Kaz ever wars anybody in a Star War is when he's in cockpit, is when he's flying his ship,
Mm.
and it only happens like 2 times. And it's like it's faceless, right? Like it's not like we see the First Order pilot, right? Like we just see a TIE fighter blow up. So it's like it was very like old school like Transformers GI Joe rules of like the bad guys never hit each other. So Kaz doesn't carry a blaster, he never shoots anybody. As a matter of fact, like there's a joke, like there's an ongoing joke in the series of like he's a terrible shot, like absolutely terrible, and he's klutzy and he's a goof. And they always said like on the ground he's like a baby bird, he sort of like hops around and looks very awkward, but the second that he's in the air, he like you can't catch him, right? Like he's
Mm.
like he's an ace pilot, right? um and that stuff was sort of all in the show, but it was like the show is just so compromised. That's the problem, is the show is so compromised by the politics
Mm.
and the nonsense going on at Lucasfilm at the time, in the midst of The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker and Solo and all of that, and them being unsure of things. So it was going somewhere, it was driving at something, and it was getting really good towards the end of season 2. And I think season 3 would have been when the show sort of like made its turn. And because I think this is how a lot of animated series tend to go, is that like you give the network what they want in season 1, and then in season 2 you start planting some seeds, so that in season 3 you can turn it and you can make it, now that it's a proven thing. It's like, okay, well, we have enough steam, let's make this the show that we actually wanted to make in the first place.
Mm.
But then they got canceled, so we never got season 3. We never got a conclusion to that story. The closest thing that we have is that if you squint and freeze frame 2 shots in Rise of Skywalker, the fireball is there, which is Kaz's ship. So anyways, all of that is the backstory to get back to Kaz and his dad. So like season 1 ends and we think that they've all died, and then we find out in the midst of season 2 that they have survived, and Kaz is like, good, send whatever New Republic resources you have left to come rescue us. We're on the far side of the galaxy being chased by the First Order, and we can't get in contact with Poe. We can't get in contact with Leia's resistance. Like something has happened, something's wrong, and we need whatever's left of the New Republic. Like you have to come save us, sort of thing. And because they had kind of like jumped into the unknown region sort of thing, right? It's like sort of removing them a little bit from the fight. And Hamato's kind of like, no, like there are so few resources left. I'm sorry, I can't waste starfighters on you and your friends, sort of thing. And it's like, wait, you're my dad though. He's like downright like bad. Like he is a bad man. So for him, like for us to flip to Ahsoka and have him be like, isn't this just all about Ezra Bridger? Like very dismissively, like sort of like poo-pooing the whole idea of like, I think you're just on your little personal quest to save Ezra, and you've asked us for resources before, and it's like, well, Ezra's one of the last Jedi, so yeah, we should go find him and rescue him. And yeah, but Hamato is not a Force believer. He is one of the doubters. So
Mm.
he's like this, like all of this
What
very much makes sense to me
I
with
I
this whole
don't
character.
understand being that old in this galaxy doubting the Force.
Yeah,
Like
I think it's one of those things. I mean, I think. Listen, there are self-serving politicians
there are
that
some dumb people out there.
that
Yeah, okay.
absolutely
Okay.
look
Fair.
at the evidence of climate change,
Fair.
right? And then go, yeah, but this doesn't get me anywhere with my constituents,
Mm.
so it's fake, right? Like they're just willfully ignorant, and
But
and
you think that character is
yeah,
willfully ignorant to the
yeah.
Force?
Oh,
Okay.
he's willfully ignorant to a lot of things, to the
Oh,
growing
okay.
conflict, to the First Order, right? Like even in the midst of Hosnian Prime being destroyed, right? And the First Order taking over the galaxy, he is still like, no, Kaz, you need to stop this. Like you've put our family in danger with your actions. Like now there's a target on us. And it's like, no, there was a target on you anyways. You're a senator in the New Republic. The First Order wants to wipe you out regardless. So fight back, right? And but like his attitude was very much like, I like we're not, let's just not get involved. If we just let the First Order do what it wants to do in the Outer Rim, it'll never be our problem, right? Like it, like very much bury your head in the sand sort of politics. And like I said, like they're like Kaz, when he contacts him, is like, we need help, right? Because they are literally being hunted by the First Order, and he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So yeah, the characterization is on point. It is razor sharp, actually. Like the performance is very, very, very good. And the
You know
and the
who
writing of the character is very good.
you know who I think was not really true to the character that we knew? Jason Sindula. That was weird that he spoke. He's not supposed to do that. He never talks.
Yeah.
Very odd.
Yeah, because if it's been established in a previous thing, then we can't change it ever
No
from what
change
was
whatsoever.
established, right?
No,
So
not
he's
allowed.
supposed to just be in the background, with,
Smiling and waving.
yeah, with big monkey ears, smiling and waving. Yeah, that's so funny because I was totally planning. I was like, let's transition into this character. Um, I mean, like, here's the thing, awesome, but also absolutely nothing. So
Yeah.
I love to see the character. I love that the casting is 1,000% on point. Um,
Looks like baby Freddie Prince a little bit, right? Like, am I crazy?
yeah, 1,000%. And I love the just, like, let's just plant a seed here. This is
Mm.
David's best, man. This is David is best. I want to go be a Jedi. And it's like, so there's obviously, like, Hera obviously is blocking him from that path, right? Like that's the subtext there, is that Hera does not want him to go train to be a Jedi. Did you catch that he has a little green pauldron on his shoulder?
I noticed that he had a pauldron. Hold on,
Yeah,
I actually
it's
saw
it's
the.
it's it's it made me like yeah,
Oh,
it is absolutely
cute,
a reference to Kanan. So
cute. I like
um
it. That's
yeah,
cute.
it's fantastic. So yeah, I mean it was great to see him. It was great to see this character in live action. I hope that this isn't all that we get to see.
Well, I imagine not, because he comes with the Ghost Lego set, which
Yeah.
could mean nothing. Like, it doesn't mean anything. But like, I imagine he's probably going to be
Yeah.
with her uh, through the quick. Because we're not done. There's more Hera stuff from the trailers.
Totally.
So
Um yeah, so yeah, we'll sort of have to sit back, wait and see
no,
what's going to happen next, but with that character. But I think that we are absolutely just like planting seeds. This is
sure,
this is
yeah,
new Jedi Order stuff, right?
yeah.
I fast forward another 12 years into the timeline, and he will be a very good age to go. And then what New Jedi Order is then like? Have they given us an exact time frame? It's like 10 years after
I think it's 15, if I
15
remember
years.
correctly.
Yeah. So like, depending on what happens within this series, right? Um, yeah, it's interesting. Well, you know what's going to be the most interesting is the Ghost is at the Battle of Exegol,
Hmm.
so we know that at least Hera and the Ghost, and presumably Chopper, have returned to this part of the galaxy at that point. But it might actually, I mean, like, I firmly believe that all of these characters, like Ahsoka, Sabine, Ezra, Jason, they will all be in that other galaxy. That is the explanation for why they are absent from the sequel trilogy. It
Hmm.
has to be, right? Like, there has to be an explanation for it. And then bringing them back into the story. What did I say in the last episode? It's so funny. No one's listening to us right now, right? Like it's this is just you and I talking to each other. But eventually people will hear this after the strike ends. And at that point it'll be like
We'll know everything.
yeah,
I know all the
i
answers, man.
i but like I firmly believe that we are setting up the Yuuzhan Vong. I like
Yeah, I agree with that.
and that's going to be like calling Rey's sequel movie, like code naming it New Jedi Order. That's what that means to
Mm.
me, is that like it is two things, right? She's going to establish the New Jedi Order, and then the other part of it is that there has to be a new threat, and it has to be an existential threat to the Jedi, right? It cannot be the Sith again. We did that. We like
Well, it
it
can, but
can, it
hopefully
can.
not.
But we really did it this time, right? Like we really did it. They turned Dark Empire into a very bad film adaptation of Dark Empire, and I like, hey, Dark Empire, one of my favorite comics, like Star Wars comics. I think that the Dark Empire series, like both of them, are phenomenal, right? Um, but especially like given the time and place that they were written in, we didn't really have much in the way of Star Wars canon other than the movies at the time. So they do a lot. They do a lot of heavy lifting, but um, just absolutely bastardized by Rise of Skywalker. Um, really just like almost like picked over like a carcass. Is like, like, let's just take these little bits of it, this thing that's been festering for 30 years. But I yeah, I think that like where you go after that, right, is to this new threat, this threat from outside the galaxy. um and that you can throw some new interesting stuff in there. But I mean, like, I don't know, man. All of it, the whole New Jedi Order is just, it's perfect. It's perfect for all of this. And we we also established Koran Horn in the canon in Obi-Wan. Like, that's
Yeah,
not a
sure.
coincidence, right? Like the next the listen, if somebody calls like yells over at some kid like, "Hey Kip, get off of that, you're causing trouble again," it's like, then we're done. Then it's 1,000% that's what's happening, right? Like the second that we have Kip Duran confirmation, it's over. It's over. Then we are just fully like, okay, so it's just gonna be the new Jedi Order. But yeah, it's a all of these seeds that they keep planting to me. It's like, and then on top of that, leaning into this thing with Sabine and the Force, and Dave's so smart. He's so smart because he's gonna tell the story that he wants to tell, but he's gonna tell it in a way that is going to cause the right kind of fervor within the community, right? Where there's so much. I don't even want to call it debate at this point because there is no debate. It's academic. George has said how this works, but um, there is so much online discourse about what it means to be force sensitive and who can and can't use the force, and this, like, Dave is he knows exactly how to like pull these levers. He's just like, I'm just gonna tweak this knob a little bit and it's going to make them talk about this show. Like, it will be like, there will be conversation, even though it's like the show itself answers the question that everybody is asking, which is, obviously Sabine is force sensitive. Does she have an aptitude for the telekinesis and mind reading and, like the force powers, capital S F capital P? No, not yet. But also, like, it's in Rebels. It was in Rebels where Kanan and Hera have the conversation of like it's very hard to train somebody in the Force who's like Kanan is going easy on Sabine in a way. He's the conversation is like, you didn't train Ezra with a wooden stick with a training blade, right? And Kanan is kind of like, well, there's a big difference between Ezra and Sabine, and Hera's like, you mean that she doesn't have the Force, is what Hera says, and Kanan corrects her of like, everyone has the Force. Like, the Force is in all living things, but it's just like some people just aren't open to it. And then he starts describing Sabine, and then Hera goes, well, what you just described is a Mandalorian. Right? And so it's just this idea that like there are actual mental blocks in Sabine's upbringing that there's a reason why the Mandalorian and the Jedi, even though from a social perspective their orders are actually very similar, right? That from a practical perspective, like they are uh, uh, frenemies at best. Right? um and obviously Dave is exploring that. Obviously, Grogu, Sabine, Tar Vizsla, going back into the Clone Wars, right? Like obviously Dave is interested in the idea of the intersection between these two cultures, and bringing this stuff together. And I think that like, I like, wherever Ahsoka and all of these characters end up, Grogu ends up there with them as well. And unless Grogu's story has finality to it at some point in the course of the story that we're telling with the Mandalorian at the moment, I don't know that that's going to be the case. I don't know that Disney would allow that to be the case.
I've got a follow-up question for these
Yeah,
predictions that you're dropping. Okay, so you're saying, and I'm not saying like you're saying this is definitely happening.
yeah,
I'm clarifying your prediction. We're heading towards a lot of these characters being kind of placed on the chessboard so that they're going to show up at the right moment for this new Jedi Order era when Rey is rebuilding the Jedi Order, and we're going to see Cran Horn. We're going to see possibly Sabine might be involved if she's
yeah,
follows this Jedi course of action. Maybe Grogu. So all of these characters are kind of being I hate using the word groomed because of the negative
Yeah.
connotation with that word, but you know what I mean. Like they're setting up these characters so that they can kind of blossom later on and
Yeah.
be more central parts of the new Jedi Order story. Do you think, because I'm pretty sure this was you last week that said this, because it was something that I really liked when I heard, and usually that's the case when you say stuff. You had mentioned that uh, Shin might be a Mara Jade type character, because I
Yeah.
had said that I think Baylan is Joris, and then you kind of countered saying, well, yeah, Shin might be the Mara Jade who kind of turned around.
Yeah.
Do you think Shin is also going to be involved?
Yeah.
Because Mara Jade obviously was, and obviously, Mara Jade became Luke's wife, and that was a whole thing, but not necessarily that. But do you think Shin is being set up to have the same type of character arc that Mara Jade had, to then be involved with
Yeah.
these other characters in New Jedi Order?
I will call it right now.
Okay.
Shin and Ezra will end up
Oh.
on a. They will end up stuck together under some sort of similar circumstances. Like
Okay.
that's what we'll build. That's what we will be building towards.
Mhm.
There will have to be that all of the stuff. I mean, like in this episode, she's got the headset and it's Anakin. It's not exactly right, but it's like very similar to Anakin's headset in Anakin and Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith in the Jedi Starfighter, right?
Mhm.
Like she's got is like that same sort of thing. Like I have been, as much as I have studied George Lucas since I became a Star Wars fan at 10 years old, since I became aware of Dave Filoni as a person, which is mostly, I mean, prior to Star Wars Celebration C5 in 2010, but because like obviously in the lead up to Clone Wars and stuff, we saw him and stuff, but it was really like at Star Wars Celebration in 2010, seeing him speak in person, seeing him speak in depth in the way that he did, because that was the first celebration after Clone Wars premiered, right after Clone Wars came out. Is that true? I think it is.
Yeah, because it was
Yeah.
2008, and then 2010 was the first.
Yeah. So, I have been studying Dave Filoni and his storytelling and the way that he does this stuff since the year 2010, really. Like, let's be conservative on that, right? Um, and it is my experience that Dave very seldom references things by accident, that like
Sure.
I was alluding to earlier, that like this idea that some people are like, oh, more nostalgia bait with another like, oh, I with the blast shield down, how I can't see, how am I supposed to fight, which she like there's a direct dialogue callback. It's like, I can't see, how am I supposed to fight, right? Like Sabine says that, which is obviously a nostalgic callback, right? But again, like Dave doesn't do this stuff for nostalgia's sake.
Sure.
I think there's an attitude that has sort of prevailed since the beginning of Mandalorian of like, oh, Dave and John are just playing with action figures, and then the two of them have reinforced that by saying like, oh, it's like when you get to, like it's like we're just like playing with our action figure, and it's like people have like seized on that
Yeah.
as this sort of like
Gotcha
this,
moment.
yeah, this like
See?
diminishing sort of ideology, right? And it's like, listen, that's certainly there for John. Like I think that for John that is paramount. I think that's his motivating factor in telling these stories. I think that for Dave, that is part of his DNA. He can't get away from it. It's always going to be there. If there's an opportunity to bring Hammerhead into it, then Hammerhead's going to show up in Bad Batch, right? Um, but but there's also like Dave is very thoughtful about when he puts these nostalgic things in there. There is so much Jedi iconography in the design of Shin Hati. There's so much in that character. Um, it is impossible to deny it. It is absolutely impossible to deny it. That character is primed for a return to the light side. Like that's, and Ezra is the best character to do it. It's not going to be Sabine. It's not going to be Ahsoka. I don't think that Ahsoka serves that role, right? Ahsoka is in this story as a mentor for Sabine to move her on to the next stage. Sabine will become a certain type of character. And then I think return to the Mandalorian stuff at some point, like in the distant future. Um, and like, because I still think that there are very real possibilities of planting a lot of seeds to unite the Mandalorians and the Jedi into one organization, like one group, right? One culture. Um, it'll be very very funny when we get that James Mangold Star Wars story, and it'll establish that, like, just like the Abrahamic religions, it's like we act like Islam, Judaism, and Christianity um don't mix when they actually all come from the same root.
Right.
They're like literally from the same person, right? Like literally, like they all believe the same initial things. They all believe in the same God. I think that the Sith, the Jedi, and the Mandalorian all come from the same source. And they, like,
They do. George Lucas.
well, they do, right? Obviously, but I think what we'll have is the storyline that we'll have, that'll be interesting, is that you'll have a group of Force users, right? And you have the Jedi and the Sith will be the very obvious split from that, of like dark side and light side. And then I think that what we'll end up with is that, like, it'll be a whole culture of like everybody just uses the Force. Everybody just has an aptitude for it, like a natural, like preternatural disposition towards it, right? And that's like the beginning of the Jedi, right? And then the Sith split off from that because some of them, think that they should be able to murder people in order to accrue power, and the Jedi will be like, we don't like that, and then they'll fight each other. And then in the midst of that, there will be a group of, like, there will be a culture of, like, this child was born with no aptitude for the Force, and in order to survive in this society, they had to use tools in order to emulate everything that a Force user can do, just to survive, right? Just to survive fighting against a Sith, to survive alongside a Jedi, right? They had to develop this skill, and then you get those three cultures, and they split off into what we know as the Jedi, the Sith, and the Mandalorians, because, like, it has been repeatedly reinforced throughout Mando that these tools emulate what the Jedi can do. What do they, like? They have these wrist gauntlets that shoot out these cables, and why do they do that? They do it to hold things in place or pull it towards them, right? Like, they have jetpacks so that they can leap and fly and, like, traverse the same way that a Jedi can, right? Like all of these weapons, everything, their helmets have these visors that allow them to see, sight beyond sight, right? Which is what Jedi can do. All of it mirrors what a Jedi's abilities are, and like compensate for somebody who exists in a world with Jedi. And the way that they've sort of talked about that in the lore up until this point is that the Mandalorians and the Jedi were at war for 1,000 years, and as a result, the Mandalorians developed all of these tools to counter the Jedi. But you could just as easily turn that and go, it wasn't to counter the Jedi, it was to counter the Sith, because the Mandalorians and the Jedi 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 years ago fought side by side because they were the same thing. And then we bring them back together in the new Jedi Order, and Grogu and Sabine are, like, at the vanguard of that movement of, like, oh, it turns out that actually we're all the same, right? I don't know. I could be totally wrong. Maybe that's just a really cool idea that I
All right.
have, but I feel like, again, it's like there are too many things being placed in front of us for it to be coincidence. And it's like every time we get a new one of these shows, it's like, here's a couple more pieces, right? Like, it just, other than Obi-Wan and Andor, which are sort of their own things, and, like, there's little bits, Quinlan being alive, Koran Horn, that stuff, which I think is going to tie into, the path ties into Fallen Order, right? Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. It ties into Cal and Marin and their storyline. So I think that we'll have that and again, like we just talked about with Resistance, like Dave doesn't do this stuff by accident. This stuff doesn't
Yeah.
get planted. The story group doesn't plant these seeds by accident. We literally have in front of us, if we ignore time, right? In front of us right now, where we exist outside of the timeline of Star Wars as observers, we are currently observing 3 separate paths to a new Jedi Order. We have Cal and Marin with Tanalor. We have Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra with Peridian, I think was the name of the planet. People have translated it from the end credits, the destination, the other galaxy,
Okay.
or planet or whatever it is,
Possibly Jason also.
and possibly Jason with that, right? And I think if Grogu's storyline ties back into Ahsoka, right, then we have that, and then we have Luke's Jedi Order, which leads to Rey's new Jedi Order, right? So we have like these 3 different factions of new Jedi that can spring up. One being Cal, very much being like the old Jedi Order, right? And like, so I think that there will be like a contingent in the future stories of like they're like these old Jedi have been discovered. It's like they weren't all wiped out. They were somewhere and they were protected, and the old way is actually protected, but the old way isn't really what we want. And this is good because it'll create conflict between Rey and Cal's order, and like that's interesting, right? It like not conflict is in fighting, but conflict is in like different ideologies, different ways to go about it, and then we can have interesting conversations about the Force, and it leads to interesting storylines. It also is very good fodder for the Yuuzhan Vong have arrived, we need to fight them, and they have different ideas of how to do that, right? And then you would have Ahsoka's, which is very much like antithetical to the Cal Kestis order, right? Because Cal very much wants to reestablish the Jedi as they were, right? Like Cal and Seer, like they like when they talk about, you know, Tanalor and everything, it's like it's very much about like we can bring the Jedi back, right? And then Ahsoka is very much like the Jedi had their chance. Like now it's time for something else, and I'm not a Jedi, and maybe that's why I'm the perfect person to train Sabine, who is also not a Jedi, right? Like
Mm.
there's sort of like the no Jedi, and then you have Rey, who is like the actual next evolution of the Jedi Order, right? Of like looking at it and going like learning from the mistakes and evolving it into what it needs to be. Um, so yeah, like that this is what I see when I look at all of this, and I could be crazy. um
Well, on that note, a few steps ahead with that prediction because a
yeah
few things would have to kind of fall into place. But let me ask you for a different prediction. Let me ask you, what is going on with a Night Sister,
yeah
2 Dark Jedi who, Baylan used to be a Jedi, so it's weird that he would be helping the Empire, if not only to survive, and a former / last Inquisitor. It's weird that these three factions are kind of
yeah
coming together for Thrawn. What do you think each character's motivation? I mean, you kind of talked about Baylan already being like he's in survival mode, like he's
yeah
just trying to get by. But like, it's weird that a Jedi who might have survived Order 66 and the Republic, really the Empire, he survived the Empire and now he's serving it essentially. Um, what do you think all of these characters have to get out of helping Thrawn get back? Because
yeah
I'm having a difficult time seeing why these characters would be cooperating and why their motivations are to bring
mm,
this dude back.
mm. Because I think that the other faction of the Empire, the First Order faction of the Empire that Gideon is leading currently, right, from a story perspective, he's not necessarily the leader. Obviously Palpatine and Snoke are the leaders of that, right? But and um oh, what's his face? His
Gideon?
grandfather. The
Oh, okay.
grandfather of um from Force Awakens.
The grandfather from.
Hux.
Oh,
Hux's grandfather, right?
oh, okay,
So at the point that we are, Armitage Hux, I think is no, Armitage is
okay.
his name, right? No, he's
He is Armitage Hux. I'm pretty sure. I think.
yeah, General Hux is Armitage.
Yeah, Jack Gleason is Armitage Hux. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So I think, is that his father or his grandfather? I can't remember. But anyways,
I think it's his grandfather. I think you're
yeah.
right.
So like, because they're like with all the cloning and and the First Order Stormtrooper program, right? Because that's Armitage. It's his whole deal. There's a storyline that ties into the first season of Star Wars Rebels. If you remember, there's the episode where they infiltrate the Academy on Lothal,
Okay, yeah, sure.
and there's the three of them, right? There's Ezra, there's Jai, who we saw last week in the premiere episode, right?
Mm.
Um, I, I
He's like a
he's
senator now
he's a
or something,
senator
right?
now,
Yeah.
and then there's the third character. I can't remember his name right now, but there's a whole book series about him
Oh.
because his sister went to the academy and then disappeared, right? And so his whole thing was like, I'm gonna stay, like I've made it into the program or whatever, and I'm gonna go find out what happened to my sister. And there's a book series about where he goes, and it ties into the Force Awakens and Finn and the First Order Stormtrooper program, like the re-education program thing. So like with their brainwashing. So they've got all that going on, right? That's very much that First Order looks exactly like the Empire, right? Like in like I mean, like there are women and people of color, so it doesn't look exactly like the Empire, because the Empire, although that's been retconned pretty heavily since Disney acquired Star Wars,
Mm.
but initially, right, we know that in the original trilogy it was a conscious choice on George's part that the Empire be very much white British guys, right?
Mm.
Because he was trying to make a point. It wasn't like he wasn't. People will go like, "Well, how come it's just all white men?" And it's like, well, because that was actually like he was actually saying back in 1977 without saying it that this is the problem, you guys. This is the problem. like he was very much saying at the time, like, yeah, toxic masculinity and white supremacy are there. It's an issue. I know that we said that the Nazis are gone, but they're not really gone. He like, man, George is such a smart guy. He knew back in the 70s that this was still a thing and that eventually would rear its ugly head. And that's the First Order looks like that, right? The First Order is the next generation of that. I think that to individuals like Balin, a former Jedi, an enemy of the Empire, right, to an Inquisitor, who are like the sort of redheaded stepchild. Sorry to redheads, but the redheaded stepchildren of the Empire, right? It's like, yes, they're
That's a
Imperials.
problematic phrase, Michael.
I know, yeah. Yes, they're Imperials, but like the rest of the Empire kind of looks down on this whole Inquisitorious thing, right? It's like, okay, this is like Vader's little pet project thing, right?
Mm.
Like it's his weird superstition. Like we can't trust them, right?
Mm.
And then you have a Night Sister who obviously has some connection to Thrawn that we don't know of yet, that we haven't gotten the full story of. But I would imagine that it's something akin to the Night Sisters were wiped out and Thrawn preserved some of their culture. And in doing
Ah.
so, I think that what they're setting up Elsbeth as is very similar to like in the Heir to the Empire stuff, the Nogri, right? Like sort of
Okay.
like Thrawn sees value in them, and so they become sort of like his honor guard sort of thing. And
Oh,
I think that
neat.
there's a potential here of like Thrawn being in the Empire but not of the Empire,
Okay.
right? Because he's a Chiss. That I think that like these Imperial misfits look at Thrawn as their only hope, right?
Oh, cool.
Of
Okay.
salvation. Like
Like that.
I'm kind of getting that sort of a like these are not, although they are threats and they are powerful and they are dangerous, right? They are not what the Empire considers their best of the best. That's
Mm.
Gideon, right? Gideon's whole thing,
Yeah.
dark troopers, stormtroopers, TIE fighters, all of that, right? and then and like what we got from that whole thing with Peleon was that, like, listen, even if Thrawn did come back, he's a freak. He's a weirdo. He's not part of this anymore. He's gone. He's dead. But even if he was coming back, he's not the future. The cloning program is the future. The stormtrooper program is the future. Like, this is what Palpatine's actually backing. Not that anybody else knows that Palpatine is part of it, but yeah, like, that's like they all I think they all feel that. So I think that's kind of what's going on there. But I think it's all kind of a moot point, because the Mando storyline will deal with all of this, I think.
Okay.
I think that what will end up happening, last week, not that it matters, nobody's listening to it, time doesn't mean anything. On the previous episode, I think I had said, like, oh, I think maybe, like, the Mandalorian storyline splitting off into its own thing, and then this Ahsoka, like, it's going off into its own thing, because I'm just kind of thinking about that other side of the galaxy, right? But I think that it's possible that at a certain point, with Sabine being connected to all of this, that the Mandalorians will come to the aid of Ahsoka and Ezra and Sabine, and in fighting Thrawn and the threat, like, this sort of threat that's looming, right?
Sure.
And preventing Thrawn from getting back to the galaxy, which I don't like. We're kind of building towards this idea that, like, maybe Thrawn will come back this season. I think that we will see. I mean, we on the trailer we see Thrawn on the bridge of the Eye of Sion, right? So I think that they will find Thrawn. I think that they, like, the plan to bring him back will be put in play, like, it'll be in action. But I think that, like, I think that if they make it back to the main galaxy, that they'll be met by the Mandalorians, like that will be the army, because Hera will have tried to convince the New Republic, and they'll have said no, and then Hera will go to Din and Bo-Katan and be like, we need you, right? Like, the Ghost helped you at one point, like we helped you, and now we need you to help us, right?
Yeah.
Like we restored Mandalore once, and now the Mandalore is restored again. We need you guys to come help us fight Thrawn. Which I think they'll be fully all for. Like, I think Bo-Katan will be like, absolutely, because Thrawn was part of all of that conflict in Star Wars Rebels, right? Like, that was season 3 and 4. So yeah, like the super commandos and all of that, like, that was all connected to Thrawn's story. So I think that I think she'll be motivated. I think she'll be motivated to join in the fight, and to get to, like, rally the Mandalorians to go fight Thrawn and their threat. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's, I kind of like, that's how I'm reading it right now, is that these guys, the four of them are kind of just like these weird misfits. It's like, because, like, we haven't seen stormtroopers, we haven't seen, Crimson Guard, we haven't seen anything, right? We've seen
Sure.
these
Yeah.
droids that Morgan Elsbeth has, and we've seen uh, uh, these four characters, right? So they're obviously operating outside of the Imperial Remnant, right?
Mhm.
Which I think is also how they're managing to stay under the radar, and
Sure. Yeah.
why the New Republic is like, what are you even talking about? It's like, there's no, are these guys part of the Empire? Like, there's no evidence to suggest that, right? We haven't seen TIE fighters or Star Destroyers, right? So yeah, that's my feeling on it.
All right.
Any other brain busters?
Where's Ahsoka gonna end up at the end of all of this?
Yeah. On the top of a mountain somewhere
Oh, okay.
that
She's
you
gonna be
have
the
to
Dalai Lama.
journey to in order to, yeah, in order
Okay,
to.
so she'll be a quest giver someday.
Yeah, I think so. I think that
Okay.
I think that she'll take over Yoda's role.
Neat. Okay.
And that, like, I I can I can visually see Ahsoka literally like at the top of a mountain, like sitting cross-legged on some sort of like a stone dais sort of thing, right? And her montrals are the length that they should be, and everybody can be happy about it. They're very long, and like they're like draped and like on the ground sort of around her, like in the sense of like even if she did get up, she'd be like dragging them around because she's now like wizened and old. um and Ray like going to her to be like, I've heard legends about you. Like I don't I didn't even think that you were still alive. And then Ahsoka will speak and she'll be like, I've heard your voice before. like for her to be like you are, like you're out there. And yeah, like if you were out here this whole time, then you know, like somebody has to explain to Ray why she was alone. I think that that's important, is that there has to be a character to have that conversation with her, and I don't think that it should be Luke. I don't know, like I in the same way that like Obi-Wan is just a disembodied voice in the sequel trilogy, and it's like his time has passed. I think it's time for Luke to not be a part of the story anymore. Like peace and purpose, man. Like let the dude rest. He literally gave everything to relight the fire, right? Like let him be at this point. Let's stop dragging that corpse back into the story. Let's not do to Luke what the New Jedi Order books did to Luke, which is like get so bored of telling stories with him that eventually we go like, what if he did use dark side powers though? Like, is that okay? Would that be okay? Like, because he's like a super duper Jedi master and he's done everything else. So like, maybe it's okay. Although I actually really like that stuff in the the Darkness trilogy, the one where they fight the ants.
Oh, that's not a popular. I haven't read it, but I know that one is not like
No, I
super
know. I know
popular. Yeah,
everybody else hates those stories. I really like them. I
I
really
have
like
them. I
all
just
three
never
of
got
those
around to them.
books. Yeah, it introduces a bunch of concepts that like for the first time. But we see in that one, we see Luke, because Jason Solo, in his quest to find a solution to the Yuuzhan Vong problem, discovers Vergier, and Vergier is, this is where all the gray Jedi garbage comes from.
Mm.
Because Vergier is like, there is no light side or dark side. Like that's a Jedi thing. There's just the Force. And the old Jedi before the Sith could tap into both. Like there was no difference between these two things to them.
Okay.
And so over the course of that, like that's how he ends up becoming, I think, Darth Cadus or something like that. I can't remember. He turns to the dark side, right?
Yeah, it's Cadus. Yeah.
Yeah, because he starts experimenting with that, because Vergier is like, it's okay to use the dark side sometimes as long as it's for the right reason. It's like, oh yeah, that sounds an awful lot like something a dark side user would tell you. It sounds an awful lot like I can I I can save her. We can save her together. Right? It's, oh, we can save the galaxy if we use the dark side. And they do, and it does work, except for that's not actually what works. Is an Sekat coming back and being like, I rejected you, and that's how you became the Yuuzhan Vong, and now you can come back and rejoin, and then, you know, love and compassion is actually what ends up saving the galaxy from the Yuuzhan Vong. But anyways, that's why I say, like, when I say that, like let's go, like New Jedi Order, yes, like we have a decade of stories that were told that that absolutely, actually, is it even a decade? How long was the New Jedi Order? 7 years.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Anyways,
But just like the Vong conflict, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not
There
sure.
there's so much in that. There is so much fodder for great storytelling for movies and TV shows. I mean, yeah, it's perfect. It's so perfect. It is where we need to go next. Retell those stories in a new way with new characters. But I because it actually does have like a satisfying conclusion to it. that if you put Rey at the center of that story instead, I think it'd be even better, because that's her whole deal, right? Like her whole deal is love and compassion. And it would be nice for her to have a story that actually like lives up to that, and as opposed to the Dragon Ball Z ending that we got. But anyways, I actually, you know what? Having just recently rewatched all of Dragon Ball Z, that's actually not the case either. Dragon Ball Z ends with like actually like love and compassion is again what saves everything. Like it
Aw.
just, yeah. And Majin Buu, who was supposed to be like the greatest threat, ends up being like an ally. And anyways, it's yeah. Dragon Ball Z is actually super good, but you got to watch the uncut version. Don't watch the American dub. It's terrible. Um
Hiffle.
anyways, yeah. Yeah, like I don't know. I think like it's all set up perfectly. But that whole thing with like Luke, so Jason goes to Luke and tells him all of this stuff, and then Luke is like, I guess maybe, I don't know, I guess maybe the dark side's not, maybe I'll experiment with this. So in the I think it's in the first one, I think it's in the Joiner King, there's a moment where they're like they're in a ship that's been like shot down and it's about to crash, and he calls on everything because he's like, we're all about to die, right? Like everybody, like a bunch of main characters are at that point are about to die, and so he calls on the dark side, and there's like lightning coursing through his fingers as he's like, you know, pulling this ship, like stopping it from crashing and doing all this stuff. And by the end of it, he's like disfigured, like it's like messed with him. And
Mhm.
it's and there's like this thing of like, he has the moment of realization of like, so we can, it is possible to tap into that power without going down the dark path, but it comes at a price. Like it literally comes at the price of your life. Like it's like it sapped away my life force, and like, so there's a whole thing. And he's like, so he goes like to Jason, he's like, you can't do this anymore, you have to stop. And then of course telling him to stop is the thing that propels him forward to do it even more. Jason ends up becoming just like an analog for Anakin in that, in
Mhm.
those later stories, right? Because there's so
Right.
much of
Yeah.
like everybody warning him, and then him being like, the more people warn him, the more sort of prideful and boastful he gets about it. And he does the force walking one, and that, like, that's where they establish that ability as well, which is like he gets somewhere first, and he leaves an impression in the force, like intentionally he leaves a sense memory in the force
Mm.
for like, that's a message for Leia and Jaina, I think, like for when they get there, like they get to this like crash site or something like that, and then like he's like, I was here, I'm alive, I'm okay, don't worry about me. And like, but like, here's what's going on. And he basically like just info dumps a bunch of exposition to them, like through this ability. But it was like, it was a really cool way of looking at the force, of like, oh yeah, I guess like time doesn't matter to the force, I don't know, like it's so like, it's a conversation, because he's like, he can tell what they're gonna say back and forth, so there's like a whole back
Mm.
and forth that they have even though he's not actually there. So
Mm.
there's interesting stuff in that. But they're fighting bugs, and people were like, I don't know why they're fighting bugs. And it's like, well, because the Sith are gone, and then we fought the Yuuzhan Vong, and now they're gone, and they gotta fight something.
Hmm.
It's actually a reference back to an old Han Solo book, but um, that's why they did the Dark Nest trilogy. But because in one of the Han Solo adventure books, it opens with, is it? I think it's Star's End. I think it's Star's End. I think it's the first one. Opens with, it's either that one or Lost Legacy. It might be Lost Legacy, which is the
Mhm.
last one. But one of those two opens with Chewie and Han are on some planet where it's like insectoid creatures. They're like ant creatures, and they've got like a scam going where they're like they're charging them money, or like not money. It's some sort of natural resource, I think, like gold or something like that, for to play movies for them. Pretty much, like they've basically set up like a drive-in theater, because like this civilization doesn't have technology, but Han and
Mm.
Chewie have like a projector I think they have like a droid with a holo projector, and that's like projecting old holovids, like old
Mm.
like holo dramas, and or like maybe it's not even dramas. I think it might be like the news or something like that. And it's all great until like something comes up in one of them that like sets them all off, and then there's like a whole moment where like it like Chewie gets back on the Falcon. They've got their droids. I can't remember the name of their droids right now, but they have like the big droid with the little droid inside its stomach.
Oh,
And
okay.
they get back in the ship. They get back in the Falcon and they're taking off. And like Han has been like overtaken by these bug people, and he's like being like swallowed up by them, sort of thing. And then
Oh,
Chewie
God.
like saves him, and so it's like it's played off as like this pulpy adventure thing in that, because that was like 1980, right? Like
Mm.
in 1979 or whatever, when those were published. So it was very like light and fun. But then in the Dark Nest trilogy, there's a moment where like Han has flashbacks to it, and it's like it turns out that Han actually is like super afraid of insectoid sapiens. Like he has like a fear of them because of that experience, and is like, for me, I literally, this is probably why I love these books so much, because I had literally just finished reading those for the first time,
Oh, okay.
because they had done a collected edition, so right when those came out, which I think was like 2006 or 2007. So like they had just done the collected edition of those three books, right? Of Star's End, Han Solo's Revenge, and Han Solo and the Lost Legacy. And I read through it. I like in a couple of days, because those books are so good. Those are my favorite Star Wars books. Which is why Solo is my favorite Star Wars movie, because it's literally
Mm.
just a movie version of one of those books. I and then the next thing that I read was the Joiner King, which is the first book in that trilogy. So
Okay.
I probably just figured all of that out. I just explained
There
why I like those books more than other people. But
you go.
I also skipped a lot of the New Jedi Order at the time. Hadn't read it, and then just jumped in there and was like, I have no idea what happened. I don't know how they solved this problem. I wouldn't figure it out for a while, until I think the new essential chronology came out, and then I read that and was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I think I'd only read like 2 or 3 of the New Jedi Order books. Not a lot of them, but anyways,
Hmm.
that was all like New Jedi Order and Clone Wars, like Clone Wars movie stuff kind of all happened at the same time, all the movie tie-in books. And I was like, I have to divide my attention, so I was very much a prequel Clone Wars apologist.
Yeah.
So I spent all my time reading, like, because when I look up at the books that I've kept, because I've gotten rid of a lot of my Star Wars books, but when I look up at the ones that I've kept, like, do I even have a single? No, there's not a single New Jedi Order book up there.
Hmm.
I've got the Republic Commando books, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, the Han Solo books, multiple copies of each of them. I have a novelization of The Empire Strikes Back from 1980. It's like a first printing. New Dawn, which is the Star Wars Rebels prequel,
Hmm.
and then um, Dark Rendezvous, Incestus Deception, Shadows of the Empire, and yeah, Tales of the Bounty Hunters. Those are the only novels and I also have a first printing of Star Wars, like Star Wars, the 1976 one, the one that came out before
Oh,
the
cool.
movie came out, that my dad found for me. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
like that's it. Oh, and Shatterpoint's up there as well. Sorry,
Mm.
Ray was standing in front of it. Um, so yeah, that's so Shatterpoint, Dark Rendezvous, Cestus Deception, like those were my jam at that time, and I was like, New Jedi Order, get out of here. You can't even pronounce half this stuff. What's a Yuzahan Vongaj?
I mean, to be fair, there's plenty of that in Star Wars.
Well, it's in the like Cestus. It's like Cestus. Like what a dumb jumble of consonants and vowels. So it's all Star Wars. That's all Star Wars. If you're gonna name something with Star Wars, just put letters where they don't belong and make it sound like something else. Uh, Speaking of Ahsoka,
Yeah.
I think we did it, man. I think that's it.
Yeah, there wasn't too
That's
much substance this
no.
episode, so which is fine. It moved the plot. Some fun action. I'm in, and I'm excited to see what happens next. So
It was a lot of like myth drops in this one
yeah,
of
cool.
like here's this and here's this and here's this and I don't know, Hu Yang with the training things was pretty rad. I liked that. Um and then them being like, that's clearly a giant hyperspace ring, but what
Yeah.
for? Which I love. Man, the idea that they're like the first time we saw a hyperspace ring was because we saw a Jedi starfighter, and a Jedi starfighter was like, okay, so we've made this little tiny starfighter. They're actually Jedi starfighters, Delta Sevens, the first ones from Attack of the Clones, are very small compared to they're smaller than an A-wing, right? Like because they're more slender than an A-wing. They're about like kind of roughly the same length, but like but in terms of profile, like it's a very small ship.
Mhm.
Um, and then they were like, okay, so logically how do we figure this out? Okay, well, it's got this thing that it docks with, right? And because it was supposed to be a little individual star destroyer, right? That was the idea, is that like, oh, the Republic turns into the Empire, don't forget. So they turned a star destroyer, that wedge shape, into a starfighter. And
Mhm.
so it's this little tiny starfighter, and they're like, well, we'll give it this ring, this hyperspace docking ring, which is a cool idea. It's a beautiful concept. The concept art in the art book is fantastic, right? And it's one of the most iconic things I think from Attack of the Clones, right? Like to me, like the Delta 7 and the Clone Troopers are like the most iconic things from that
Mhm.
movie. So then to turn around in the year 2023 and go, the Chimera got launched into hyperspace to the other side of the galaxy, right? That's what we kind of knew from the end of Rebels. We figured unknown regions or something like that. And now we're learning like, no, not the other side of the galaxy, other side of the universe, like another galaxy. It's like, okay, so the Purgles did that. How do we get the Chimera back to this galaxy? Well, if the hyperspace rings worked for little tiny versions of Star Destroyers, then let's make a gigantic hyperspace ring for a Star Destroyer. And I just think that Dave Filoni is a wonderful human being. I just think that he's fantastic. And I'm just gonna hug him the next time I see him, if he's okay with it. I'll get consent first. Don't
Get
worry.
consent. Get consent.
I've shaken his hand on multiple occasions, and I gave him a T-shirt one time,
Oh, cool.
with some art that I made on it, but for Frontlines. Uh, but uh, but yeah, the next time I see him, I'll be like, I would like to hug you, and he'll be like, okay, I get that a lot. I don't want to hug you. I'll be like, you don't have to hug me, but I would like to tell you why I would like to hug you, and then I'll tell him, and he'll be like, okay, sure, because he's very patient with fans, even though he doesn't need to be. And then I will tell him, it's because you made a super weapon in like a hyperspace ring into a super weapon. That's what you did. You went like, what stupid gigantic thing, because like, oh, Star Destroyer, Sun Crusher, Death Star, Star Killer Base, what's mine, what am I gonna make it, what's mine gonna be? And you were like, giant hyperspace ring. And I just thank you for that, Dave. Just wherever you are, whatever you're doing right now, you can't hear this because we haven't released this episode, but thank you, just thank you for that, because other people are like, Star Wars is explosions, and I'm like, no, Star Wars is dumb, and I mean that in like the most positive way possible. And I can think of fewer things as dumb as hyperspace ring for little starfighter. Make big, make really big, really really big.
Super big.
That's about like, that is peak Star Wars dumb, and I love everything about it. And it's like, to me, that is perfect. It is like, it fits right in with muddy Chewbacca have shower now. Okay. Right? Shower with Han, even dumber. Even dumber. So good. Best scene in the entirety of Solo. That whole sequence from the time that Han and Chewie meet until like they're on the gangway of the AT hauler before it takes off into space. That is like that's my favorite part. I mean, like I'll go even further and say like through the whole train sequence. The train sequence is so good. Oh my god, Solo is such a good movie, you guys. Whenever you're listening to this, just stop what you're doing. Ahsoka's done. We finished it, right? Who knows when Skeleton Crew's coming out? They've probably delayed it because of the strike. Just go watch Solo. Cool. Okay, that's it. That's an episode. We did it. We made a podcast. Joe, can you hear me? No. I'm not even gonna. We're not even gonna like fix it. I am going to tell Joe via Messenger, say goodbye. And then he's going to say goodbye. Probably right about now. Just say goodbye.
Goodbye.
There it is.
Bye, everybody.
That's the episode. Thank you guys for listening. Whenever it is that you have listened to this, and thank you to all of you that support us on Patreon and all of that sort of stuff. Patreon.com/Thunderquack. Join us on Discord to talk about stuff a million years in the future once the AMPTP has finally relented and given a fair deal to the studio, not to the studios, that is the studios, to the I can't think of the word right now, the Screen Actors Guild and the WGA, the unions, that's the word I'm looking for. So hopefully that's all been resolved, and that's why we were able to release these episodes. Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to Thunderquack Force Perspectives. Our opening theme is composed for us by Christy Carew. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV. And join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/Thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the Thunderquack Podcast Network.